I ended up having a C-section. I one evening was just sitting on the couch doing some work for Pro-Life San Francisco. I had gone for a long walk that day, longer than usual. Not because I was trying to induce labor, but just because I wanted to get out. I would try to do like daily mental health walks. And I stayed out like 40 minutes walking that day, which was way longer than usual, but it was good for me to get out just for the sake of my mental health and to walk the dog. Um, and also, my son was breech. I knew he was breech. I was aware of this. And I was doing all the things to try to get my son to go to move head down because I knew if he was breech, I wasn't going to be able to birth at the birth center. I guess it's too much of a liability to have someone who has a breached uh, baby to birth. But y'all, women have done it. If I could have birthed my baby breached, I would not have been the first nor the last. Women have done it. It's possible. And I even was kind of looking into it for a hot second, like, can I birth my baby breached? Like, can I, as in, what provider would be willing to work with me, if any? But now I'm moving more towards the end of a complete undisturbed birth, where it's just like you and your spouse, if anybody. Maybe not even having a doula or a midwife come work with you at a home birth. So I had gone for a really long walk that day to try to move my son head down. I was looking into this program that would have done a grant for me to get acupuncture because I saw online that acupuncture can help with moving babies head down. So I was dancing, I was doing all the things like sitting on the couch, going down head first to the floor, doing all these different movements to try to get my son to move head down. And he would not. I remember I did this one course program called Pain Free Birth, and I didn't get a chance to finish it. I was also reading a book called Supernatural Childbirth. Thank you, Mallory's mom, for giving this to me. Supernatural Childbirth, Experiencing the Promises of God Concerning Conception and Delivery, which is also about how to birth without pain. So I didn't even get to finish the book. I didn't even get to finish that course that I was watching, the modules, because that day when I came back from my walk, I remember my kid neighbor was hanging out, playing here for a little while, and then she went home, and I was finishing up whatever I was working on. I closed my laptop and my water broke. And I started freaking out. I was really worried because allegedly the health professionals were telling me, based off of how my son had measured, that he was 36 weeks, that I was 36 weeks along. I think, based off of my body being the fertility awareness charting queen, I think I was really like 38 weeks along, which would have been full term, like no reason or cause for concern. But they were saying that I was 36 weeks, so it was really me and my bodily intuition against the medical system, who were telling me one thing. And they even said to me, like, okay, well, if you're really 38 weeks along, then we actually should be concerned for how small your son is measuring. Then I guess they would want to take more precautions because of how small he was. And my son is small. The last time we went to a pediatrician, he measured less than the like 25th percentile. And if you don't know what that means, which I didn't know what that meant until I became a mom to a child on the outside of the womb, that um to be in the something percentile means, for example, if your child is in the 98th percentile, that means they're bigger than about 98% of children, and only 2% of children are bigger than that child. So my son, last time we saw a pediatrician, um, and they gave us like 22%, 24, I don't know, something there, that he's only bigger than 20 something percent of children, and 80 something percent are bigger than my son. And to be honest, I don't care, because my husband and I are small people. So what was I to expect? Giving birth to a 6 foot something quarterback? Like, okay, like, why y'all so pressed about my son being small? Like, it's as if people don't come in different shapes and sizes, right? Like, what? Anyways, so allegedly I was 36 weeks along when my water broke. And I immediately was just panicking, thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm a month early and my water just broke. And I was FaceTiming my husband in real time when this happened. He was away on a work trip, which we thought we had time for him to be on one last work trip and then come home and not travel after that, thinking that we were a month early, right? And, but now, like, I should have listened to my internal motherly intuition to be like, that last work trip, I'll be about 38 weeks along, actually. So maybe you shouldn't go. But anyways, right, hindsight is always 20. And so he heard me in real time on the phone say, I feel like I just peed, but I know I didn't pee. And he immediately knew that meant my water broke, and he immediately started looking for the next best first flight out of Little Rock, Arkansas into San Francisco. Meanwhile, I go look at reasons to call the midwife if you believe your water broke. And so I go ahead, I call the midwife from the birth center, who says to me, yeah, I would go ahead and pack a bag and head to the hospital. And I just start crying. I say, I'm scared, because I knew I was, one, early, two, my son was breached, and three, I was alone. Like, okay, yes, I had my son in the womb. Yes, I had my dog Manolo. And yes, of course, I have my guardian angel. Like, of course, I wasn't really alone, but I was the only adult human with me physically. And I was contemplating, like, do I wake up my neighbor? And I know she would have been down, but I don't know. It's just one of those, like, birth, like, if you think of other animals that go birth, they go birth alone. Like, this should not really be like a community event. I didn't want to go ask my neighbor, like, hey, can you come with me to the hospital? I could have, but I made the decision not to. I did not have a go bag ready. I Googled on YouTube, what should I include in my hospital bag? And then I was even contemplating, do I just walk to the hospital? Do I ride the bus? Because it's just like 2 blocks down the road. Literally, I'm not exaggerating. And so I was thinking, like, oh, do I just like doodly doodly doo, here I am in labor, walking to the hospital, like, what? But my midwife actually offered to come pick me up, and then she drove me, and then she actually stayed with me for several hours, till like 3 a.m. And I'm really appreciative of her for that. And I remember we got to the hospital. I had no idea where to go. Like, I would not have known what to do, how to navigate. I was just so stunned. I was just like physically in shock. Like, I was like physically there, but I was probably like a shell of a human, because I'm just like, what is happening, huh? And then I was taken to whatever room for them to confirm that yes, it was amniotic fluid. And they had to do it. They did a cervical check to, I guess, see how far I was dilated, and I guess I wasn't dilated at all. I don't know, something like that. But now I I look back and it's just like, why do you even have to confirm that it's amniotic fluid? Like, of course it's amniotic fluid. Like, what else would it be? Like, why do you have to put it in a whatever they used, a cotton swab or something? Like, why do you have to put this in me to test what? Come on, we all already know this to be true. And they thankfully wanted to try to see if they could move my son physically. I think it's called aversion, where they physically put their hands on the mom's belly and try to move the baby on the outside of the belly to move head down. And that was really painful. I remember asking the midwife if she could get my rosary out of my bag, and I think she held my hand, and in my other hand I had my rosary, and I was praying so fervently that my son would move head down so that I could have a vaginal birth. And they told me the doctor who was doing it, who was moving my son, was like the best one who could have attempted it. And sadly, my son would not move. Apparently, I had been having contractions and didn't realize it. I just thought it was my son stretching or kicking me in a funny way. But now I realize, like, oh, I was in early labor and I had no idea. And looking back now, knowing what I know now, being in a place of confidence now, if I could go back, if I could like rewind, I wish I would have tried laboring at home. I wish I would not have hurried to call the midwife and hurried to start packing and hurried to the hospital and been in such a fight or flight freeze mode. I wish I just would have calmly thought, my body is doing what my body is supposed to do. I'm in labor, and that's okay. And sometimes labor takes days. And I just wish I wouldn't have been so scared of the unknown and just tried laboring at home. And then maybe went to the hospital if I felt like things weren't right. But in that moment, when the water broke, I don't think there was any need to hurry off. But, anyways, when he tried moving my son and my son wouldn't move, I was really disappointed. But I was just thankful for the opportunity to try to move my son. Like, I was just thankful for the opportunity to try. Because I know I had tried everything in my power to have him move, but it was up to him. It wasn't just me in that equation. And then the doctor tried, and he still wouldn't budge. So not only was he eager to come into the world, to the outside world, but he was also stubborn from the womb. Love you, JT, but that seems to be true. And then it was a waiting game for my scheduled C-section, and they knew my husband was states away and hurrying to fly over, and so they scheduled my C-section for the morning. And that night, my phone was blowing up because the news was made known that I was having my son early, and I couldn't sleep because my phone kept buzzing. Understandably, I get it. People love me and wanted to check on me, but that would have been my last night's sleep before having my son be born. And if you have children, you get it. What sleep is like once they're outside the womb. Okay, now every baby's different. But let's just say I have yet to have a full night's sleep with my now 9-month-old outside the womb. Okay? So my phone was blowing up, and I was just like, paralyzed, like, oh my gosh. I remember in the morning, my husband got there. Thankfully, he was driving through the night to Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas, where he found an early direct flight to San Francisco. So he did a 5-hour drive in 3.5 on those interstate highways and immediately Ubered from the airport to the hospital. So then he stayed with me for 3-4 days at the hospital after his work trip, like didn't even go home. um but anyways, and he got there to the hospital room, and then we had a sweet moment of just embracing and just couldn't believe that here we are. And then they had to separate us to get me ready for surgery, and I was really sad because this just was not the birth I was wanting. I really wanted that unmedicated, natural, undisturbed, glorious, female empowering birth. And I just felt like if there was a spectrum of like the birth I wanted versus the birth that I got, like I was way on the other end of that spectrum to have a C-section. And I just remember sitting on the surgery table, having the shot put in my back to numb half my body, and I was crying. And the medical persons were telling me like, oh, it's okay, you'll be fine. Thinking that I was crying because I was scared, and I was not scared to have this surgery. I'm thinking like, oh, like I'm one of many, like I'm like this is a routine surgery for you guys. Like I'll be in and out. Like that's not why I'm crying. I was crying because I wasn't getting the birth that I so desperately wanted. Thankfully, my nurse also was a practicing Catholic. Earlier that evening, or I guess that day, the morning of, she walked in to introduce herself and like, hi, I'm your nurse. I'll be here with you throughout surgery, post operation. And she saw me praying my rosary, and she said, oh wow, I love that you're praying that. I pray that every day. And I was like, what? Huh? What? Huh? Like out of all of San Francisco, I got a practicing rosary praying Catholic nurse. Like what? Like what are the odds? Hello? Reiterating this story, I definitely see that was God's hand to tell me he was there and I wasn't alone. Of course, I wasn't alone, right? But I had him in that moment, and, having that assurance with a nurse who was like, yeah, I pray the rosary too. And I'm like, what? Fun fact, I was at the front of the West Coast Walk for Life that happened in San Francisco, a major West Coast country pro-life march. So I was at the very front holding the center of the banner, and my Catholic nurse was there too. At the very end of the march, she ran up to me and she was like, hey, remember me? And I was like, oh my gosh, girl, hey. And I was like, there's my son over there. So that's a nice kind of bow, like tying up that story of having that Catholic nurse who was also clearly pro-life, because homegirl was at the West Coast Walk for Life, okay? I don't know why I keep saying okay. And so as I'm sitting on the operating table, I'm crying. They're thinking I'm crying because I'm scared. I was crying because I was sad, disappointed, not getting the birth that I wanted. And my nurse came over and she showed me her bracelet that said the word fiat. And if you don't know, fiat is the Latin translation of when the Blessed Mother, the Virgin Mary, was asked by the angel Gabriel to be the mother of God, because she consented. Okay, she didn't just wake up and was suddenly pregnant. No, she said, thy will be done. Fiat. She gave her yes to God, to his will. The Blessed Mother is such a beautiful example of giving your will over and allowing for God's will to be done in your life, saying yes to that. Because it does require us to give our yes. And so she leans over to me and she shows me her bracelet that has the word fiat on it. And she's like, hey, fiat, I know this isn't not the birth you wanted, but we have to give God our fiat. And looking back at my birth story, my birth experience, I felt like one moment was on the couch, closing my laptop. The next moment, somehow I'm on this operating table. And the next moment, my son is outside of me. Like, it just felt like boom, boom, boom. Like, wait, how did we get here? And birth, I understand now how it's such a big life event. And for many women can be a traumatic life event. And somehow we're just supposed to keep going. Somehow now it's be a mom to your child on the outside and learn to breastfeed your child on the outside. So when they were operating on me, my husband and I were continuing to pray the rosary. Not because I was scared anything was going to go wrong, but just like in preparation for this big moment, the reveal of our child. And fun fact, we wanted to be surprised if we were having a boy or a girl. So we did not know. And I really like that we did that. And I think I want to do that for every child going forward. I want to believe there is something in the way how we were created and designed as mothers for that release of chemicals when you find out that moment when your child is born, if you're having a boy or a girl. Like I don't think that was meant to be revealed when we are still pregnant. I mean, it's beautiful that technology can allow for that, but I don't think that was a part of God's design. So I want to do that again, being surprised. And my husband told the persons to pick up our son, like Simba, like show us him over the curtain. And throughout my pregnancy, I was saying, like, I think I'm having a girl. Like, I don't think there's like a teeny weeny, itty bitty yellow polka dot bikini. Teeny weeny penis in my uterus, just chilling. I wanted a girl, so I think that's why I was saying, like, I don't think it's a boy, purely just because I wanted a girl. But now that I have a boy, I'm like, nuh-uh, I'm a boy mom, like, boy all the way. So they held my son over the curtain. That's when we saw that we had a son for the first time, and we both were like, it's a boy. And then they did whatever they were doing on that table as I'm just like there cut open. Another funny part of that story is because Jerry, my husband, was seeing me cut open through all these layers. Sorry for getting grossed out, but also not sorry because this is just like life and the human body. It's not gross. But if you're getting grossed out, sounds like a you problem. But anyways, my husband, he made the joke, now I can say you're beautiful both inside and out. And so sometimes we still joke about that, like, I'm beautiful inside and out. He gets to say that because he saw me. He saw my insides. my layers. And then I guess they immediately weigh the baby and check for different things. And if I could do it again, if I had to be in a C-section like that again, if I was able to advocate for myself, remember, I had a doula, right? Well, for some reason, my doula's phone was off, and she was like, my phone is never off. This was the one time my phone was off. So, for whatever reason, God ordained it that she was not with us that day to help and like be my advocate. But so if I could do it again, I wish I would have said immediately put my son on my chest. Immediately, I want skin to skin. Do not clothe him. Do not. Honestly, why do we even put those stupid hats on babies? Do not put that stupid hat on him. Like, why? What is the point? What is the point? Y'all think they cold all of a sudden? What? I mean, watch. Somebody's gonna message me and be like, here's the point, Melanie. And it really saddens me when I think about it. Like his first moments of being swaddled and whatever else, I was not there for. I was not there for those moments because I was strapped to the table. A friend who also unexpectedly had a C-section told me once that like we can look at our C-sections like examples of the cross, that we are like strapped to a table similarly to Christ being nailed to the cross, and we're literally being cut open for new life to be born, to be released. And I've been praying most days. I'll put my hand over my womb and I pray that I will have a vaginal birth after cesarean, a home birth after cesarean, because it was really hard not getting the birth that I wanted. Um, and I hope that if God gives us more children, that He will restore this part of my life, that He will make beauty out of what seems to be the ashes. But I feel like telling this story now, we can see God's hand, the Blessed Mother's hand throughout. This was a lot. I just literally shared my whole birth story. Not only did I not get the birth that I wanted, but I didn't think breastfeeding would be a struggle. I thought, okay, I may not have gotten the birth that I wanted, but surely breastfeeding won't be a problem, right? Wrong. But that's an episode for another day. So I hope sharing the story of my birth has inspired you. Sharing how I navigated my own pregnancy has been something you can empathize with. Now it's different being a pro-lifer. And it was one thing being a pro-lifer before becoming unexpectedly pregnant, and then it's another thing being a pro-lifer after becoming unexpectedly pregnant, and being a pro-lifer after navigating birth and the medical system and navigating prenatal care. Like, it's such a different perspective now, a different worldview, having lived it. And now I understand with so much more empathy and grace what women may be going through, and how to actually talk to women who are experiencing similar things to what I experienced and maybe are considering abortion because of it. So I hope that maybe you've learned some things too on my experience that you can take with you, keep in your back pocket, on how you can also talk with people who are navigating unexpected pregnancy, navigating a birth, the birth that they didn't want after choosing life. Like, this is a lot. I get it. Like, we don't want the babies to be killed. And we have to remember, too, the unique, powerful, difficult experiences that are pregnancy and postpartum. So, on that note, stay tuned for future episodes. I want to definitely talk about what life has been like postpartum, navigating breastfeeding, and postpartum depression. She's the worst. Alrighty, y'all. Thank you for listening to the Open to Life podcast. Over and out.